Find out more now about the Conservative Party's plans to bring down migration levels. We're joined by the Home Secretary, James Cleverly from Westminster. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. So you are proposing today an annual cap in visas, but you're not putting a number on how many. Why not?
Well, we know that immigration, legal migration, has been too high over the last couple of years. We've taken measures already, which, as your report said, has now started to bring those figures down, measures that were opposed at the time by the Labour Party. But we also recognise, as your report said, there are benefits to migration. My mother came here as a migrant, as did many other people in the UK who have contributed enormously to our society and to our economy. But migration, just with every other public policy, comes at a cost. And balancing the benefits and cost is what our new policy is going to do. So for the first time, we're going to get the Migration Advisory Committee to crunch the numbers to look at both the benefit and the costs of migration levels. The government will then set a cap on the number of visas it will issue in that year, something that will then be voted on by Parliament. This will make sure we properly balance both the numbers of people coming here and the benefit they bring, but also the cost, whether it's in school places, housing demand, health places, etc.
When Jacob Rees-Mogg asked you in Parliament only a few months ago about the idea of having a cap, you were saying that managing one would be difficult. So why is it suddenly possible?
Well, the point that we're making is that the numbers that we're seeing are too high. We're committed to bring those down, and as I say, we've already started plans that have had an effect, and those figures, as you say, come down by 10%. We recognise managing immigration is not easy, and that's why we need to take it seriously. One of the things where we do have control is the numbers of work visas, and we are going to set a number on that. As I say, it is difficult, it is challenging, and that's why the MAC will do the number crunching and give us the evidence based upon which ministers will make decisions. But we're committed to control our borders, and that is in stark contrast with the Labour Party, who have opposed and voted against over 130 times, 139 times, all our border control measures. And that's the difference between the Conservative government, we take border control seriously, and the Labour government, who basically want to return to free movement.
And we will, of course, continue to talk to Labour about their policies. You're talking about net migration recently having fallen 10% in the last year. But let's just remind our viewers that figure that we just also mentioned, that net migration is now more than 3 times higher than it was in just 2019. And you go through, I mean, your various manifestos over the years. In 2010, you said you'd bring the level down to tens of thousands. In 2015, you said you would bring the level down to tens of thousands. In 2017, you said you'd bring it down to tens of thousands. In 2019, you said you'd bring down the levels significantly. The overall numbers will come down. Given that record over 14 years, why should people watching this morning thinking about this election believe that you really can get the numbers down this time?
Well, for most of the elections that you've highlighted, we were members of the European Union, where we had free movement and therefore did not have full control over our borders, something that the Labour Party supported at the time and support still. Between 2019 and this election, we have had a number of unprecedented events. COVID, where we saw a large number of people leave, I suspect wanting to be with their families in that very difficult and scary time. A number of those people have come back. A pause on overseas students, and they've now started to come back. So we've seen the influx, we haven't yet seen them starting to leave at the end of their courses. And of course, included in those legal migration figures was a very generous offer that we've made to the Afghans who helped us during our military campaign there, the Ukrainians fleeing conflict from Vladimir Putin, and the British nationals in Hong Kong. 3 very honourable and right things to do. Now, they've distorted the figures, but the difference now is that we are putting forward a plan which will set a cap, will limit the number of work-related visas, which, as your report says, is the bulk of the numbers, and we will do that scientifically balancing the needs and costs of the immigration policy. And again, I draw that in stark contrast because elections are about choices, and the alternative is a Labour government who have consistently advocated for free movement, who have voted against our border control measures time and time again. When it comes to illegal migration, their big offer is to do less than we are currently doing and somehow claim that that will bring about better results. It's just not credible, and I think the British people over the next couple of weeks will see through it.
OK, illegal migration, migrant crossings. More than 10,000 people have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year. That's higher than the first 5 months of any year since records began. Again, your record doesn't suggest that you can or will get the numbers down.
Well, we have committed to stopping the boats, and we've always recognised that is incredibly difficult. We are seeing numbers of migrants across Europe increase dramatically, and it's not just a European phenomenon. When I speak to my colleagues in North America, both Canadian and American politicians, they're having challenges as well. But we are putting things in place. That's why the Rwanda scheme is so very important as a deterrent, something the Labour Party said they will take off the table. So they will have nowhere to send people from Syria, for example, or people from Iran if they come here. So they will inevitably, Labour will inevitably have to have an amnesty because they are removing that third country location. And then the other thing, which I think is really quite remarkable and under-commented upon, if you don't mind me saying, is that Labour's big reveal, this border command, already exists. It's called the Small Boats Operational Command.
Okay.
It's commanded by a British Army general. It already liaises with domestic and international law enforcement and intelligence services. Now, either Yvette Cooper does not know this organisation exists, which is pretty embarrassing for the Shadow Home Secretary, or she does know it exists and she's pretending it doesn't. And that kind of dishonesty... Well, no, let me finish.
Let's talk about your plans.
That dishonesty to the British people, I think, is completely inappropriate.
Why have small boat crossings risen so dramatically over the last few months?
Well, as I say, there have been larger numbers coming across continental Europe. The tactics of the people smugglers have changed as we've put increasing pressure on them. Working with the French authorities in particular, we have prevented something in the region of 9,000 crossings, which is up year on year. So we are preventing more people coming across, but it's quite clear that those people or smugglers are trying to flood the system. And sadly, as they're forcing more and more people onto these small boats, we are seeing fatalities increase, which is incredibly sad, something that we want to prevent. That is why we're working with our international law enforcement colleagues in, not just in France, but through Europe. That's why we're attacking the people smuggling gangs through the National Crime Agency, and we're using the full suite of legislation. But we also need a deterrent, which is why Rwanda is incredibly important, something that the Labour Party has said they will scrap on day one, even though we are currently doing the preparatory work for flights to take off shortly after the general election. The Labour Party would scrap it, as they say in their own words, even if it is working,
but just
which
to be
I think
clear,
is unbelievable.
Just to be clear, we heard yesterday that it looks like that's been delayed by at least an extra couple of weeks, doesn't it? Can I just ask you, given how important migration is to people like those in Boston, who we just heard from in the piece from Lincolnshire, your hearts must have sunk yesterday when you heard that Nigel Farage wasn't just taking over as leader of Reform, that was now going to be standing as a parliamentary candidate. How does that change the dynamic for you as Conservatives in this campaign?
Well, I think the person whose heart really sank was Richard Tice, who's obviously been squeezed out. Look, a vote for Reform is not going to create a Reform government. Reform is not going to form part of the next government. It is either Rishi Sunak and a Conservative government, or Keir Starmer and a Labour government. And this is a Labour government who will not commit to when they would properly fund our defence. We've committed to 2.5% for defence. They won't commit to that. They are all over the place when it comes to immigration. As I say, voted against our immigration controls at every opportunity. Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner took the knee whilst BLM protesters were attacking police officers.
We're talking about Nigel Farage.
But the point I'm saying is, a vote for reform is exactly what Keir Starmer wants, because he knows that is the best way of getting a Labour government who would do the opposite of what I think the British people need and want. He'll be weak on borders, he'll be weak on policing, he'll be weak on defence, and he'll be weak on the very issues that British voters. And that is the inevitable consequence of voting reform. A vote for reform opens the door to a Labour government, and a Labour government would just open the door and wave people through into our country.
James Cleverly, we leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. And Keir Starmer will go head-to-head with Rishi Sunak in the big TV debate live on ITV tonight.